Once upon a time in a small village, there lived a boy named Sam. He loved to draw. Every day after school, he would sit under a tree with a sketchbook and a single pencil. But one day, as he was drawing a bird, his pencil broke. Sam was heartbroken. He didn't have a sharpener, and he was too poor to buy a new pencil, so he stopped drawing. Days went by. Then one afternoon, his teacher noticed he wasn't drawing anymore. She asked, "Why did you stop, Sam?" He looked down and said, "My pencil broke." The teacher smiled and said, "But the pencil still works. Just sharpen it with a knife. Even a broken pencil can draw, if you don't give up." Sam's eyes lit up. He rushed home, found an old kitchen knife, and carefully sharpened his pencil. From that day on, he never stopped drawing, no matter how many times his pencil broke. Years later, Sam became a famous artist, and he always carried that first pencil in his pocket to remind himself, backhand index pointing right, even when life breaks you, you can still create something beautiful. Years passed, and Sam's name became known across the country. His paintings hung in galleries, and people admired his talent. But Sam never forgot where he came from or the pencil that taught him resilience. One day, he was invited to speak at a big art school in the city. The auditorium was full of young artists, eager to learn. As Sam stepped on stage, he didn't show his awards. He didn't show his best paintings. He held up an old, broken pencil. Everyone stared. He said, "This pencil taught me more than any teacher ever did, because when it broke, I had a choice, give up or keep going." He paused and looked at the crowd. You see, life will try to break you. People will doubt you. You'll doubt yourself. But if you keep sharpening your mind like I sharpened this pencil, nothing can stop you. There was silence in the room, and then a loud applause. After his speech, a shy girl came up to Sam. She held out a torn sketchbook and said, "My drawings aren't good enough. I was going to quit, but your story changed my mind." Sam smiled and gave her the pencil. "Then let this pencil be your first tool. It's old, but it carries the spirit of never giving up." The girl's eyes sparkled. She took the pencil and walked away, already dreaming of her next drawing. That night, Sam sat alone in his studio, watching the stars through the window. He whispered to himself, "Sometimes the smallest things leave the biggest marks." And that old broken pencil? It had drawn a future for more than just one artist. Years rolled on. Sam grew older. His hands weren't as steady, and his eyes didn't see colors as brightly as before. But he still painted, not for fame, not for money, but for peace. His studio walls were now filled with letters from people all over the world. Young artists, struggling dreamers, broken hearts. Each letter said the same thing in a different way. "Your story gave me hope." One day, Sam received a letter with no return address. It was short, just one sentence. "Thank you for saving me." That night, Sam stared at the pencil he had once given away. He wondered where it was now. Did the girl become an artist? Was she still drawing? He had no way of knowing. So he did something he hadn't done in years. He painted a picture, just one. It showed a little girl holding a pencil under a starry sky, smiling at a blank canvas. He titled it, "The Beginning." That painting became his final gift to the world. Months later, Sam passed away peacefully in his sleep. His studio was turned into a small museum, and in the center of that room sat a glass case. Inside it, an old broken pencil. A note next to it read, "Even broken things can write powerful stories." And just like that, Sam's legacy lived on, not in award or galleries, but in the hearts of those who refused to give up. Years passed, and Sam's story became a legend. Children from schools visited the museum every year. They stood around the glass case and listened to the guide say, "This pencil belonged to the great artist Sam. He started with nothing except determination." One day, a woman in her early 30s visited the museum. She wore a simple coat and carried a worn-out sketchbook. As she entered, her eyes welled up. She walked straight to the pencil case. It had been decades since she last saw it. Yes, she was that little girl. The one Sam had handed the pencil to all those years ago. She whispered, I kept it until I couldn't anymore, but it never stopped guiding me. She opened her sketchbook and showed the receptionist. Inside were hundreds of illustrations, some raw, some beautiful, all filled with emotion. I'm an illustrator now, she said with a smile. I create books for children who feel like they don't belong. Sam didn't just give me a pencil. He gave me belief. The receptionist, moved, asked her to speak to the students visiting that day. She stood before them, holding her sketchbook, and said, Sometimes the smallest gift can become the biggest turning point in your life. I was about to give up, but a broken pencil reminded me that broken doesn't mean useless. One of the students, a quiet boy with messy hair, raised his hand. He said, Can I be an artist too, even if I'm not good yet? She walked over, tore out one of her drawings, and gave it to him. Not good yet, she repeated. That's exactly how all great artists begin. And just like Sam had once done for her, she passed the flame forward. Outside the museum, the clouds began to part and golden sunlight spilled across the pavement. As she walked away, she felt something warm in her pocket. It was a tiny pencil stub, her daughter's, and she smiled, knowing the story was just beginning again. That evening, the woman returned home to her small apartment filled with colors, books, and laughter. Her daughter, Lily, a bright 9-year-old, was sitting on the floor with crayons scattered around her. But something was wrong. Lily's eyes were red. She had tears on her cheeks. What happened, sweetheart? The mother asked softly. Lily sniffled. I messed up my drawing. It was supposed to be a tree, but it looks like a blob. The mother smiled gently and sat beside her. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the tiny pencil stub. Lily's pencil, the same one she had held earlier that day. Do you know, she said, that the greatest artist I ever met once gave me a broken pencil? Lily looked up confused. A broken one? Yes, her mother nodded. And it changed my life, because he showed me that mistakes are part of the masterpiece. The tree you drew may look like a blob to you, but maybe it's a magical tree, or a funny one, or something only you can see. Lily stared at her drawing again. Slowly, a small smile returned to her face. Can I try again? Of course, her mother whispered. Try as many times as you need. That night, Lily didn't stop drawing. Page after page, she poured her imagination out. Her fear of imperfection faded. The next morning before school, she surprised her mom with a drawing, a tall tree with stars hanging from its branches. At the bottom of the paper, it read, To Mom and the man who gave her the pencil. Years later, Lily would grow up to become a designer. Her art would appear in children's movies, cartoons, and picture books. And one day, when a nervous young fan approached her and said, I don't think I'm good at drawing, Lily smiled and handed him a tiny pencil stub. She said, Let me tell you a story about a broken pencil that started everything. And so the legacy of that one small pencil, the one that was once broken in Sam's hand, continued to inspire generation after generation. Lily's name soon became known in classrooms and art circles alike. Her stories weren't just colorful, they were powerful. They spoke of failure, of trying again, and of seeing beauty in imperfection. But Lily never took full credit. At every award ceremony, every school visit, and every interview, she would say, This started with a man named Sam. He gave my mother a pencil. That pencil gave us everything. Then one day, a documentary filmmaker reached out to Lily. He wanted to make a short film titled The Broken Pencil. Lily agreed on one condition. She said, We must visit Sam's village. We must show where it all began. So the crew traveled with Lily to that quiet place where Sam had once sat under a tree, sketching with a pencil and a dream. The tree was still there, taller now, old, wise, and full of memories. Lily stood beneath it and placed a framed drawing at its roots. It was Sam, sitting cross-legged with a pencil in hand, surrounded by stars, children, and dreamers. She whispered, Thank you. The documentary aired globally. Millions watched it. People who had given up on their dreams found the courage to begin again. Old sketchbooks were reopened. Dusty guitars were restrung. Stories long forgotten were finally written. Social media flooded with the hashtag Broken But Brave. Art schools began telling Sam's story during orientation. A scholarship was started in his name, the Sam Pencil Grant, for students who showed promise not in skill but in persistence. And far away, in a small classroom, a little boy with a speech disorder watched the documentary. He couldn't draw well. He couldn't speak clearly. But he saw Lily and Sam and all the lives they touched. He picked up a broken crayon and began to draw. That little boy's name was Eli. He lived in a quiet town, often sitting at the back of the classroom, unnoticed, unheard, and unsure of himself. Eli didn't talk much. Whenever he tried to speak, the words came out stuck, tangled, or silent. But he had feelings, deep, rich feelings, with nowhere to go, until he saw the documentary. The moment it ended, something shifted. He picked up that broken crayon, red and dull, and began drawing on the back of an old homework sheet. His first drawing was messy, then the next one slightly better, and the third even more expressive. Eli began to draw every day. He drew how loneliness felt. He drew how silence sounded. He drew what words couldn't say. One day, his teacher noticed. She picked up a sketch he left behind, a picture of a boy drowning in letters that wouldn't come out his mouth, while a tiny broken pencil floated above him like a lifeboat. The teacher showed it to the school counselor. That drawing made its way to the principal, then to the local newspaper. Before long, Eli's story, told without words, began to reach people. He was invited to share his drawings at a school exhibition, but Eli was scared. "I can't speak," he told his mom. She smiled and said, "Then let your art speak for you." So Eli stood on stage. He didn't say a word. Instead, he played a slideshow of his drawings, one after another. The room was silent, not out of awkwardness, but out of awe. By the end, half the audience was in tears. From that day on, Eli was no longer the silent boy in the back. He was the artist who spoke through colors. He went on to create a graphic novel called Unspoken, a story about a boy who couldn't talk, but saved the world using his drawings. And on the inside cover of every copy, he printed one sentence: "This story exists because of a broken pencil that never gave up." Years passed. Eli's name slowly made its way into classrooms, bookstores, and even libraries across the world. Children read Unspoken and felt seen, heard, even without saying a word. But Eli never forgot where it all started. Not with his own talent, not even with his first drawing, but with the story of Sam and a single broken pencil. One afternoon, Eli was invited to speak, or rather, present, at a school for children with special needs. He walked into a bright classroom filled with wheelchairs, hearing aids, walking sticks, and shy smiles. There, in the farthest corner, sat a boy named Rayan. He had autism. He didn't make eye contact. He didn't speak. He was always drawing shapes and then crumpling them up. During his presentation, Eli noticed Rayan. Something about him felt familiar. After the event, while students gathered to ask for signed books, Eli quietly walked over to Rayan. He sat beside him and gently slid a sketch pad across the table. Then, using his hands, Eli drew a rough heart with a crack in the middle. Rayan stared at it. Then slowly, carefully, he picked up his own pencil and filled the crack with color, bright, bold, and full of life. Eli smiled. He reached into his bag and pulled out something wrapped in a soft cloth. Inside, a pencil stub. Not just any pencil, Sam's pencil. The very one that had been passed from Sam to the girl, from the girl to her daughter Lily, from Lily's story to Eli's hand. Now it was Rayan's turn. Eli gently placed the pencil in the boy's hand. No words, no speech, just a legacy, handed silently from one artist to the next. From that day forward, Rayan began to draw every single day. He created characters that didn't speak, but felt deeply. He built worlds where emotions lived outside the body and silence had color. And years later, when Rayan grew up, his first animated short won an international award. He stood on the stage, the spotlight bright, and the crowd quiet. He held up the pencil stub, still protected in glass, and typed into the screen. Behind him were the words. This is not just a pencil. It's a voice, a hope, a legacy. And I am not the end of the story. I'm just another beginning. As Rayan stepped off the stage, the room still filled with applause, a woman approached him with tears in her eyes. She introduced herself as Eliza, and then she said something that made Rayan pause. Sam was my grandfather. Rayan's eyes widened. He gently held the glass case containing the pencil and whispered, This belongs to your family. But Eliza shook her head with a smile. No, she said. My grandfather believed that hope was not meant to be kept. It was meant to be passed on. You're doing exactly what he would have wanted. They sat together after the event, sharing stories. Eliza telling tales of Sam's quiet days under the tree sketching, and Rayan sharing how the pencil helped him find his voice. And then Eliza did something unexpected. She pulled out an old envelope, yellowed with time. Inside was a letter written by Sam himself long before he passed. It read, If anyone ever holds this pencil and wonders if they're good enough, tell them. The pencil was never perfect. I wasn't either. But still it drew. Still it moved. And that's all that ever mattered. Rayan felt chills as he read the words. He knew this story was no longer just his. It was Sam's. It was the girls'. It was Lily's. It was Eli's. And now it was his. Rayan decided that the pencil should no longer stay behind glass. So he launched a global initiative called the Pencil Path. One pencil, one person at a time. Each person would create something with it. A sketch, a poem, a song, a photo, and pass it on. It traveled across continents. From war zones to art schools. From hospitals to homeless shelters. From prisons to playgrounds. Wherever it went, hope followed. Eventually, a young girl in a refugee camp used a pencil to draw her dream. A school where no child was ever too poor to learn. That drawing went viral. Charities took notice. Donations poured in. And months later, that exact school, brick by brick, was built. On the wall of the entrance, a mural was painted. It showed a hand holding a broken pencil. Below it were 5 words. This is where hope began. Years passed. The mural faded under the sun, but the message never did. The Pencil Path Project changed thousands of lives. The pencil had touched more hands than anyone could count. And then one day it was gone. The package meant to deliver it to the next recipient arrived empty. The pencil had vanished. Some believed it was lost. Some feared it was stolen. Others said, maybe its journey is over. But Rayan, he didn't panic. He just smiled and said softly, maybe it's just resting. Or maybe it's where it's needed most. Weeks turned into months. And then one rainy afternoon, deep in a forgotten part of the city, a boy named Noah found an old pencil beneath a park bench. It was wrapped in cloth. It was short, chipped, and worn down, but there was something unusual about it. Etched faintly on its side were the words, still drawing, still moving. Noah had never heard of Sam. He didn't know about Eli or Lily or Rayan. All he knew was that he was tired of feeling invisible, tired of being told he was just a kid from the wrong side of town. So that night by candlelight, Noah drew. He didn't have fancy paper, only the backs of grocery receipts and torn notebook covers. But he poured his heart into every line. A few weeks later, his teacher found one of his sketches, a drawing of a boy planting flowers in cracked pavement. She pinned it on the school board. The school principal saw it, then a local art group, then a youth magazine. Soon, Noah was invited to speak on a youth talent panel. He walked up nervously, holding the same broken pencil in his hand. And when asked how he started drawing, he simply said, someone left this for me. I think it was waiting. The moderator, curious, asked, do you know where it came from? Noah shook his head. No idea, but I'm going to keep it going. And someday, I'll leave it for someone else, just like someone did for me. And so, the pencil story, lost, found, passed on, continue quietly, not with fame, not with noise, but with purpose.